Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're excited to have Alex Null, our Director of Healthcare Business Development, leading today's session. We'll give it about a minute for attendees to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, it looks like we're about a minute past, so I can go ahead and get started here. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm thrilled to welcome you to our NAB CE credited session, Preparing for 2025, Proven Strategies to Transform Your Healthcare Hiring. As we dive into the new year, today's session is designed to provide you with actionable insights and step-by-step guidance to help you attract and retain top talent in 2025 and beyond. Our goal is to leave you today feeling inspired, informed, and equipped with strategies to strengthen your hiring approach and set the foundation for long-term success. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to send them to the Q&A feature through Zoom, and we can go ahead and address those at the end. One more housekeeping item here is that I'm going to be taking my camera off as my Wi-Fi has been unpredictable, to say the least, over the past week or so. And I just want to make sure that you all get the content that you all signed up for today. So I'll go ahead, remove my floating head here, and we can get started. So before we dive in, I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Alex Nault. As Tara mentioned, I am the Director of Healthcare Business Development here at Hirology. I spent several years working in the healthcare sector with a specific focus on recruitment initiatives in long-term care specifically. Over the years, I've gained a deep knowledge of the applicant landscape, their preferences, and decision-making processes. Today, I'm excited to talk about a topic that I'm passionate about, and that's hiring the right team to care for our loved ones in the long-term care space. Now, whether you're a vendor, an administrator, you work in HR, your role is extremely critical to enhancing the lives of our seniors. It is a demanding profession that often doesn't receive the recognition that it truly deserves. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for your time and dedication that you bring to this extremely important work. Now, in the next 30 to 40 minutes, I'll provide insights to help you better understand the applicant landscape and offer tangible ways to streamline your current hiring process. My goal is to equip you with the topics and tools to make informed decisions and improve your recruitment strategy for faster, more efficient hires. And in order to do so, I'll be addressing the following questions throughout this webinar. Are you facing the same challenges as your peers when it comes to hiring and retention? Where are your peers sourcing top candidates for hard to fill roles like CNAs? What do top job seekers want from employers, and what are your competitors offering? And finally, what opportunities do you have to stand out and capture your fair share of today's healthcare industry job seekers? Before I dive in, I want to note that the data throughout this presentation comes from original surveys that we conducted here at Hirology. We do two surveys in the healthcare space at the end of last year. The first is a survey of healthcare facility HR teams, and that's to get an understanding of their challenges and what they're doing to overcome them. But then we also surveyed applicants in the healthcare industry in order to get a more holistic understanding of what's happening in today's job market, where we asked their expectations for things like job interview and communication speed, the top benefits that they're interested in, and their typical job search process. The survey questions we had for the HR professionals touched on the following themes: 2024 hiring challenges, what was happening last year, average hiring speeds that they were seeing, top channels for applicants and hires, and hiring bottlenecks within their facility or community. Now, let's go ahead and dig into those results. The first theme that I want to highlight focuses on the challenges around recruitment and healthcare hiring as a whole. We'll go through what facilities are struggling with as it relates to hiring and retention, as well as our advice for overcoming those challenges. Now, overall, despite a cooling job market in many sectors, our employer study found that the healthcare industry, by and large, is still finding the hiring climate to be incredibly challenging. 94% of respondents said that hiring at their facility is still somewhat or extremely challenging, while 90% say that retention is still a challenge. 44% said that they feel hiring is even more challenging than it was a year ago. And again, that's in 2023. And about half have more open roles this year than they did last year, while 26% said the number of those open roles has stayed the same. Now, when you think about the state of the healthcare employment over the last few years, this makes sense. The pandemic triggered extreme burnout amongst many of the professionals who had opportunities outside of healthcare. And on top of that, younger workers entering the workforce are less likely to choose professions like CNA or RN. Month after month, the BLS releases data about job creation, and healthcare always finds its way into the top three. We're seeing more jobs and less workers, which is only perpetuating high competition. So, where do the greatest challenges lie when it comes to hiring at healthcare facilities? In our survey, most reported that CNAs are the most difficult role to fill today. And again, we're seeing a higher demand for these types of roles and a declining interest among younger workers and high levels of burnout. And all the results seem to make sense. There are just fewer people out there with the skills or the interest in gaining those skills to meet the current demand. And demand for these types of roles is always going to remain steady. People are always going to need healthcare, and even more so in the next decade, given the high aging population in the country as it stands. Not only are CNAs difficult to hire, but they're even more difficult to retain, with almost 70% of respondents reporting that this role drives the highest turnover. And unfortunately, I think the majority of this turnover could be attributed to burnout, which I was mentioning in the last slide. Difficult and demanding work, combined with lower pay and inflexible benefits, tend to exacerbate this as well. As we get further into the presentation, I'll touch on what facilities can do to provide the benefits healthcare job seekers are looking for. When we ask respondents to dig deeper into why they find hiring so challenging, no-shows and ghosting in the application process top the list, meaning that they're able to get candidates in the door, but they find these applicants often drop out without warning at some point during this application and hiring process. Now, this is an important trend to highlight because we found out that applicant volume topped the list in years past. But what we're seeing now is a speed and process issue that's happening internally. Job seekers typically ghost employers when they find other opportunities or the process is too long and too complicated. This shift might be due to ongoing inflation, leading to more people re-entering the workforce, but they still have the upper hand and plenty of options for work. So they can afford to ghost employers when they don't hear back fast enough or the hiring process doesn't necessarily fit their schedules or their needs. For example, when the application process isn't mobile friendly. Now, this is a huge miss because we're seeing 70% of today's job applications are originating on a mobile device. I want to go ahead and reiterate that stat again because the number is pretty staggering. 70% of the applications that we're seeing are originating on a mobile device, which means if your application isn't mobile friendly, you've most likely lost them. Now, I challenge all of you to go on your mobile phones after this webinar and try to apply for one of the open positions that you have. If you can't apply on your phone, or it's taking longer than a few minutes, or it's requiring a lot of upfront information like collecting documents, I urge you all to start conversations internally on how to change and streamline that process. Now, you're probably thinking to yourselves that the state of the healthcare hiring market feels a bit bleak. And if you're struggling, just know that you are not alone. This is exactly why you're here today. And I'm here to hopefully provide new ideas and tweak your current processes to update your job design, your channel strategy, and applicant engagement. And that's what I'm going to dig into for the remainder of this presentation. First and foremost, I want to touch on what we're seeing from facilities or communities when it comes to benefits offered and overall job design. What are your competitors doing? And what do job seekers want? Understanding the answers to these two questions can help you design jobs that capture the attention of top talent and get ahead of your competitors. By and large, facilities are offering a fair range of benefits across the board, with workplace culture, education reimbursement, and schedule flexibility topping the list. And when we ask job seekers what benefits they value the most outside of pay, those same benefits rang true. Which means if your facility is not offering a top-notch workplace culture, education reimbursements, and especially schedule flexibility, which is such a critical benefit in an industry known for burnout, which I was mentioning earlier, you're most likely missing out on top talent that's choosing to apply to your competitors due to the benefits that they're currently offering. And when we ask healthcare job seekers what would motivate them to take a lower paying role if they received two offers, a few interesting things stood out. First, only 9% said nothing. That means that only 9% of job seekers are motivated only by pay, and that 91% of job seekers will take lower paying roles if there are other benefits on the table that meet their needs. Top benefits that job seekers prioritize over pay include, you guessed it, schedule flexibility, career growth, and workplace culture. Based on what you know from the previous slide, most facilities say that they're offering flexibility, training opportunities, and feel that they have a great culture. But only about a third said that they offer real growth, job growth opportunities. In other words, if you're not offering these things, you're behind. And if you are offering these benefits already, you need to find ways to market those perks, which brings me to my next slide. To talk about job descriptions, why do they matter? And how can they help you differentiate your competitive advantage over the competition? And I want to break that into two main reasons. First and foremost, applicant volume. A great job description will capture the attention of more job seekers who are sifting through hundreds of options for work and are looking to quickly identify openings that meet the needs that match their skills. And then there's applicant quality. The right job description will also help you attract people with the right skill sets and experience to apply to your jobs, ultimately helping you increase your candidate to hire ratio. Typically, we recommend a structured formula here. Don't start with responsibilities and duties. Rather, I want you to start with a quick, short summary of what makes your company unique, then a short summary of the job for SEO purposes. This is a 1 to 2 sentence bare bones overview of what the job is using relevant keywords. You need to stand out by describing why your company is unique and what the job actually is. But then I want you to dive right into the benefits. What's in it for the applicant here? Oops, sorry about that. Gotta go back here. All right, sorry about that. This is the most important part of your job description is the benefits section, and it needs to come ahead of the responsibilities and requirements. Because again, people have high expectations for what they want, and they have plenty of options for work. But you're going to lose qualified applicants if you aren't shouting this from the rooftops. People want to know first and foremost that what you're offering is what they're looking for before they learn about what the actual role entails. So this is where you highlight everything that is most important to your applicants. Schedule flexibility, culture, benefits, career growth, guessed it. Then you can dig into responsibilities and requirements. And finally, always include an equal opportunity employer statement. Now, once you've done this, I want you all to take a step back and read through your job description and ask yourself, would you be excited to work here and have this job? Use the description to help drive excitement as a way to promote your employment branding. And my final recommendation here is to make sure your benefit information is highlighted in big, bold letters on your company careers page. The next opportunity I want to discuss is reaching candidates on the channels that they're currently using. Much like with job design, it's important to understand what your competitors are using to source talent and then what job seekers are using. And most importantly, I want you to look for those gaps. So what channels are your competitors using? According to our survey, By and large, facilities are covering their bases using a wide range of channels with social media, referrals, and job boards at the top. And when we asked survey respondents to select their top performing sourcing channels for applicant volume, job boards was number one. And now that makes sense. Job boards are an incredibly popular and common channel for job seekers. And if you're paying to sponsor your jobs, you're going to see a high volume of applicants. And while volume is important because it's good to have options, it's also important to make sure that you're receiving quality applicants during this process, which brings me to my next slide. When it comes to finding quality applicants, we found that referral programs are almost tied with paid job boards. What this tells us is that job boards aren't going to go away, and they can be a great source for applicant quality when you have the budgets to support them. But referrals can be a really effective and inexpensive way to source great talent. We see referred applicants hired at 7 times the rate of all other applicants, and study after study shows that referred candidates not only tend to get hired faster because your team has essentially vetted them already, but they perform better because they're likely similar to the high-performing employee who referred them. And all of this is free to do aside from the cost of your referral bonus, which is typically cheaper than the cost of advertising on major job boards. Or if you don't have the budget for this in your community or your facility, maybe test out other options that might resonate with your employees. Things like extra PTO days, a free meal stipend, or something as small as publicly recognizing employees in company meetings. Newsletters or social media goes a long way. But despite referral programs being a top driver of quality candidates, most facilities aren't getting the most out of them. By and large, facilities are still relying on spreadsheets to track referral candidates and word of mouth to promote their employee referral program. And only about a quarter utilize texting to promote this program. Overall, 40% said that they wish more employees would participate. Now, why is this an issue? Because you could be turning your best employees into your best recruiters if you promoted this on a consistent basis and arm your employees with the tools to do it easily. If you think about the healthcare worker and their day-to-day role, they're not necessarily incentivized to participate in this program. So if you're rarely communicating the program and advertising the bonus payout you're offering, people aren't going to participate because it's not top of mind. You need to think about this like a marketing campaign for your facility or your community. You want to reach your team on the channels that they're using, which these days is a smartphone. Remember, 70% of applicants are originating on a mobile device. And you want to make sure that you're hitting them with the right message to drive participation. I wanted to expand on the concept of referrals here a bit more by touching on some additional job seeker data that we have. We found that overwhelmingly, healthcare job seekers are open to returning to organizations they've previously worked for and places they've applied to in the past, but they weren't necessarily hired then. This goes the same thing with former employees when it comes to referring candidates to old employers. Now, what this tells us is that the concept of referrals can be applied a bit more broadly. You should be connecting with people through all kinds of relationships and engaging with them, even if you don't have an immediate role open. Stay in touch with your former employees and candidates that you've liked. Send them texts or send them emails once in a while with updates, making sure that this is top of mind for them. And don't limit yourself to existing employees when it comes to seeking referrals. Connect with former employees asking for referrals. If a former employee is happy with the time that they spent with you, the data shows that they'd be willing to refer their friends. So to summarize our talent sourcing section, what opportunities do we have? First up, employee referrals. This isn't just about getting names, it's about tapping into your team's network to uncover top-notch talent by constantly filling that pipeline. By optimizing your referral programs, you can unlock a pipeline of skilled candidates who come pre-vetted by your own employees. Next is casting a wide net. The days of relying solely on one channel are gone. To reach the best candidates, you need to be where they are. That means leveraging various channels, social media, job boards, career sites, etc., to ensure your posting reaches a diverse audience. And finally, Broadening your network. Don't limit yourself to just your current employees. Expand your referral networks to include former staff and past applicants. And by doing so, you tap into a rich pool of potential talent that might otherwise go untapped. So, in summary, by optimizing your referral programs, casting a wide net across various channels, and broadening your network, you can enhance your hiring efforts by and secure the best candidate for your facility. The next topic I want to touch on is keeping your top talent engaged in the hiring process so they don't ghost you. The top two ways of doing this is to stay high touch with your applicants and keep the process engaging. Let's go take a look. First and foremost, I want to start with the importance of speed. How fast do you have to move exactly? In our survey of healthcare facilities and communities, we found that 86% say they responded to new applicants within 2 days, and 76% fill roles in 2 weeks or less. Meaning, if you're taking longer than 2 days to respond to an applicant, you've more than likely lost them. You know the drill. Let's compare this with the candidate expectations. When we ask healthcare job seekers why they ghost, or I've said this a few times, why they no-show to job interviews, the top three answers all have to do with speed and communication from the employer. They will ghost you if you do not move fast enough to their initial application or throughout the hiring process, and if you leave them in the dark communication-wise. So based on these two slides, we know that job seekers will drop out of the process if you can't move fast enough and your competitors can. Meaning you need to be moving faster than your competition to keep yourself in the race. Adding more fuel to the fire, even if job seekers are engaged and interested in your organization and your team, more than half will always take the first offer they received. So even taking an extra day or at times even a few hours to move candidates along can be detrimental to your ability to hire quality talent. So what can you do here? First thing I want to highlight is a process overhaul. Define a clear and concise process for your candidate journey, and then I want you to educate your teams. Define how long an applicant should wait before they receive a response from the data, hopefully within minutes of applying. Have a gold standard of how long it should take to hire for specific positions, and then make sure that standard is known so that you can hold your teams accountable. The next point is metrics and analytics. It's crucial to track your process and understand not only what's slowing you down, but where you're currently crushing it. Look at the data that you have to diagnose bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the application process or at specific facilities. Look at the sources that are bringing you the most qualified applicants and allocate time and resources accordingly. See where you can leverage automation and technology throughout this process to give back your hiring managers time. Which brings me to my final point, and that is to embrace technology. Look for hiring tools that centralize your process and automate manual steps, allowing you to increase your hiring speed without necessarily requiring more headcount on your recruiting or your HR teams. For example, you can speed up the hiring process and reduce ghosting by leveraging automatic candidate communications. This saves your team time by removing manual emailing and texting, and allows the candidate the frequent communication that they expect during the application process. Speaking of tracking metrics, I wanted to take a quick minute to touch on this a bit deeper because, as we all know, what gets measured gets managed. When we looked at the survey results, we found that for the most part, healthcare hiring teams are not tracking any metrics to help them understand and optimize their processes, which presents a real opportunity for those of you who do. Figure out what's working and what isn't in terms of applicant sourcing, internal processes, etc. And be intentional about making adjustments accordingly to put more eggs in the appropriate baskets versus continuously doing the same thing month after month and seeing no results. From a bit more of a consultative standpoint, we typically tell our customers to track these metrics when they use the Hierology platform, and we make it easy to do. Everything from applicant volume per source to process adherence across your team and locations. And if you don't have this data at your fingertips, try to hit the easy things first to at least get ahead of the competition. Use your best employees as your recruiters. Communicate early and often with those applicants and see if your job board representatives can provide some insights as to what's working and what isn't with your account. And finally, the last thing I wanted to touch on is AI and automation and how these types of technologies can improve your speed in candidate engagement. According to our survey of healthcare facility HR teams, only about 7% of facilities are using AI in any capacity in the recruitment process, which makes sense as the idea of using AI in recruitment specifically is still a fairly new idea. And it takes time for organizations, especially large ones, to adopt new tools and new technologies. But 55% said that they feel somewhat or very comfortable with the idea of using it, which tells us that the concept of AI is becoming a little bit more mainstream. However, when we asked where they see AI playing a role in the hiring process, most said that they really weren't sure, with 20% reporting that they feel AI could help with identifying top candidates. So what this all means is that the healthcare HR teams that we talk to are curious about AI and open to the concept of using it to make applying to their jobs easier, but most don't really understand how it could work in a more practical sense. And finally, it's tough to bring up AI in recruitment without addressing the very valid concerns of bias. When we asked, almost half said they do feel concerned about biases that might potentially arise with AI in the recruitment space. Now, recruiting in HR is a highly personal yet complex field where the right answers and decisions are almost never clear cut. It's natural to have some concerns and reservations about adding AI into this mix. While AI has the potential to complete tasks in a human-like manner, it will always lack the intuition and nuanced perspective that humans bring to the table. AI tools only know the historical information that you've provided, but humans can contextualize a person's potential beyond just data points. Now, without the human touch, you can't guarantee that the best decision will be made for the unique needs of your team. Many times, the best candidate isn't always the one with the best resume. So what's our advice for healthcare facilities who are curious about AI, but aren't quite sure where to start or are held back by bias concerns? First is to experiment with the public AI resources that you have at your disposal. The data shows that healthcare facilities are cautious, yet curious about AI. The good news is you can experiment with AI without making massive investments by leveraging free resources like ChatGPT. You could use these types of tools to draft candidate emails that you can revise and then reuse as email templates throughout your hiring process. Or you could experiment with prompting it to write job descriptions and then again, saving those as templates, saving you time in the long run. Now, whatever you choose to try, the key here is just getting yourself familiar and comfortable with the technology. Next is invest in forward-thinking HR technology. Many applicant tracking systems and recruitment softwares alike are beginning to integrate AI into their platforms. Look for solutions that offer tools like automated communications, AI-based interview scheduling, and more. Software providers that are already using AI in these ways will be leaders as AI becomes more commonplace down the line. The next thing is getting your data in order, which is extremely, extremely important. AI has the potential to revolutionize hiring for the better, but for AI to be effective, it needs to be trained on complete and accurate data. This means that every applicant and candidate in your talent database must have a completed profile, and every rejection, interview, hire is logged into the system with as much information as possible. With a clean database, you'll be able to leverage time-saving tools like candidate recommendation engines, job description writers, and more so down the line. And finally, using AI for efficiency and not decision-making. AI-driven hiring processes depend on the quality of the data used to train the algorithms, like I was mentioning before. So biases present in historical data could be made worse by AI, leading to unintentional discriminatory outcomes. Now, to ensure fairness and transparency, a level of human involvement is always going to be essential. While you can conduct data audits and work to improve your algorithm, we would never advise to leave final decisions around hiring to AI entirely. Simply put, AI should be used to empower your team to work smarter and streamline your current processes, not automate the decision making on those applicants. Short and sweet, and that's all I have for you today. Now, if you like what you saw and you want to dig in a little bit further, our team created a report for anyone who is interested, and that's the data that I was presenting earlier. You can visit hierology.com/guides. If anyone has specific questions on the material I reviewed, please feel free to reach out to info@hierology.com, and we'll get you set up with a one-on-one consultation. I want to thank you all so much for your time today, but I will go ahead and open up the floor to any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you, Alex. I will help cover some of these questions or read them off to you to answer. There have been a couple in the chat or in the Q&A feature. So the first one being, what are job seekers' top needs outside of pay?
Yeah, it's a great question. A few of those that I reiterated a few times during the presentation, but that's going to be schedule flexibility, career growth, and then I think the last of those three is really education and tuition reimbursement, right? Like those three really kind of like tie in to I think the next one that I wanted to mention, which is workplace culture. This is one of the most important things that we're seeing from the applicant side of things. So making sure that you're highlighting those three, or those four, I should say, are going to be huge. But a few others that we've seen, I know some of the communities and facilities that we work with use them because it always goes back to what makes sense at the facility level. We've heard things like training and mentorship programs. I've heard things like uniform or commute or cell phone reimbursements. But the biggest thing here that I want to just reiterate with this question is that I want you to be creative with what makes the most sense for your community, your culture, and within your budget.
Great. Another one that we got is, what are some ways to show rather than tell job seekers that you have a great culture?
Yeah, this is a great question as well. And culture seems to be something that is consistently being brought up time and time again, no matter what survey we do. First of all, I want to bring this back actually to the career sites. I mentioned that briefly at the beginning of this presentation, but the applicant in general, and I don't even think this is just in healthcare, this is really like vertical wide here or industry agnostic, but people are doing their research on their own for their careers, just like you would do if I'm tying it back to healthcare, right? Like that you'd be doing if you're going to be putting, your loved one into a specific home. You're going to do your research not only online, but I'd be calling, I'd be reading reviews, but we're seeing time and time again, the applicant is seeing these reviews, but they're actually going to the website to see what's happening on their careers page so they can see this type of like culture and branding information. So I want to make sure that the careers page is bright, inviting, it showcases that all you have to offer. I've seen a lot of success stories here in the form of testimonials. That can be from your employees who are actually working at your community or your facility, or even the residents and their families. Having that information goes such a long way to show that your loved ones are going to be really taken care of. The testimonials that I've seen really successful, they include photos, they include videos. And then I want to make sure that this is reflected in the job description. Again, that's what I was mentioning earlier. So it's not only on the careers page, but it's actually in the job description for those specific jobs. You just want to make sure that really this is front and center anywhere the applicant might be seeing your company or your brand.
Great. One more question, unless we get any others in. But what's the best advice you have for identifying the best of the best in your pipeline?
Got it. I'm going to go ahead and just assume this is applicant pipeline here. Yeah, I mean, another great question. Here's something that I will do a little bit of a hierology plug because we do have some features within the hierology platform that help kind of identifying this. And these are things like pre-screen surveys. What is a pre-screen survey? It's something we also call them, knockout questions. These are questions that, like, if you fail this or you are unwilling to do X, there's no reason to really interview that person in that process. So, giving you a quick example, if a candidate answers, specific questions incorrectly during these knockout questions, you're not willing to take a drug test, and your facility or your community requires them, we'd go ahead and automatically fail that survey, even if they get everything else right, right? So this is going to be freeing up your time interviewing that applicant because they're not going to comply with something that is very specific to your facility. We also include other questions for them to fill out that weren't in the initial application because, as what I was mentioning earlier, if the application process is taking a little bit too long, those applicants are going to drop. So we want to make sure that we're streamlining that. But this is where you can get a little bit more granular with maybe the certifications that they have, whether they're willing to work specific weekend shifts, stuff like that. The last thing that I wanted to highlight in terms of actual functionality within hierology is we also include a starring system, which allows you to rate the applicant from one to five, and then you can segment that list of applicants so that, again, you're interviewing and spending your time and your resources appropriately on those fours and fives based on those, the pre-screen surveys that I was mentioning earlier, obviously what's on their resume, whether they are a referral or not. Again, this is just allowing you to prioritize those quality of applicants. And the last thing, this is just not from like a hierology standpoint, but like, where's the source coming from? From like the main buckets we're seeing job boards, we're also seeing internal referrals and career sites. From the data that we've been collecting, we are seeing, obviously, as I mentioned before, internal referrals are our number one source. Again, we're seeing them hired at 7 times the rate of the job boards. I'd also ladder that down to career sites. If you're seeing someone that's applied based on your career site and actually applying from your website, to me, they bought into that culture. They bought into the benefits that you're offering. They want to get hired by your facility. And then lastly, I would be prioritizing those that are applying on the job boards.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that is a wrap. I don't see any other questions in the chat. As Alex mentioned, if anyone comes up with any questions or would love to learn more about hierology, you can reach out to us at info@hierology.com. But thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the session valuable. The recording and presentation will be shared out within the next 24 hours straight to your inbox. And yeah, thanks for joining. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.